My name is Eva Kepes. The following is my recollection of my life experiences as recounted to my grandson, Ruben, at my home in Bergen. I was born in 1936 and lived with my older sister and our parents in a town called Bergen-Belsen in Hungary. We had a large extended family. When war broke out in 1939, Hungary joined Germany and Italy and fought against the Allies. Hungarian Jewish men were sent to labour camps early in the war. My father was sent to one of these camps, and for the duration of the war, we had no idea where he was or whether he was alive. During that period, my mother ran our small haberdashery shop and managed to support us. In 1944, the Hungarian government attempted to switch allegiances and join the Allied fight against Germany. Hitler immediately occupied Hungary and appointed Adolf Eichmann to exterminate the Jewish population of Hungary. On the 5th of April 1944, my 8th birthday, all Hungarian Jews were ordered to wear a yellow star. We were ordered to leave our homes and move to a ghetto in our village of Bergen-Belsen. Here, all the Jews from our town were forced to suddenly adapt to living together, very, very limited food and space. In late May, we were taken from the ghetto to a large factory facility in the nearby city of Szolnok. This was our introduction into our new reality. We slept on the bare concrete floor. All around were naked corpses. Many people were committing suicide. This was a tremendous shock for us children. Mother was taken away and interrogated for 16 hours. Thankfully, she was not tortured and was able to assist those who had been beaten. Eventually, Mum was released and returned to us. At Szolnok, there was a selection. Those who were to be sent to Auschwitz and those whose fate was forced labour. We were selected for Auschwitz. Of course, we didn't really know what this meant, but Mother realised that the labour camp was the preferred option. Somehow she managed to convince the soldiers that because her husband was in a labour camp, she and her children should be in the preferred selection. My children, and their children, and I are here today entirely thanks to my mother's intuition and determination. At Szolnok, we were crammed into cattle wagons and began a long journey to Austria. We arrived at the agricultural labour camp. Here we were housed in stables. Mother worked in the fields all day. 6 months after we arrived, we were again forced into cattle wagons and taken to Germany. Along the way, whenever the train stopped, Mother would forage next to the train tracks and bring us Swedes and beetroot. We ate these raw and covered with mud. When we finally arrived at our destination, we were forced to march along a long and dreary road. Those who couldn't keep up were shot. We tried to avoid looking at the dead people, while at the same time making sure that we remembered them. We eventually arrived at our new home at the concentration camp of Bergen-Belsen. We were searched and disinfected and assigned to our barracks. I remember the brutality of the daily roll call. We stood in lines in the freezing cold. The guards were extremely aggressive. They counted us, hit us, and had their dogs ready to attack us. Mother made sure that we always left our barracks in time for roll call. My worst memory is of the carts stacked with naked, emaciated corpses being pulled by slaves that the Nazis called Häftling. They were the most oppressed prisoners. Once a month we were taken to be disinfected. On the way we passed other parts of the camp. The worst was the area with the Russian inmates. They were kneeling with their hands tied above their heads. They looked more dead than alive. Among many of our starving inmates, fighting for food was common, but Mother made sure that we shared whatever we had. For Shosha and I, the main struggle was making sure that Mother would also eat and not give all her food to us. On April 5th, 1945, my 9th birthday, we received our one and only Red Cross parcel. It contained water crackers, butter, sugar cubes and a small blanket. 4 days later, on 9th of April, we were selected, along with 2,500 other inmates, to be loaded onto trains. Again, we found ourselves crammed into cattle wagons. We survived this journey by rationing the sugar cubes that we had saved from the Red Cross parcel. The trains stopped frequently. We had no idea what our fate would be. Many of our fellow prisoners perished during the journey. Eventually the train came to a stop. The doors opened and we realised that the shot soldiers standing by the wagons were Americans. This was our liberation. The soldiers, stunned by our emaciated condition, gave us their food rations. Many people devoured this, but after so long without real food, the shock was too much and they died. Mother understood the risk and allowed us only one mouthful each. The American soldiers requisitioned a building in a nearby town, Hellersleben. We spent 4 months there. Many were treated for typhoid, but we slowly recovered our strength. We enjoyed the luxury of a room just for the 3 of us. Mother, as usual, was enterprising and started making clothes from the curtains, first for us, then for other survivors. Eventually our return to Hungary was arranged. In August 1945, we arrived to my mother's cousin's house in Budapest. I did not recognise the man who was waiting for us. It was my father. He had seen our names on a list of survivors, so he travelled to Budapest to search for us. We had no idea that he had also miraculously survived. During these days, we discovered that 16 of our immediate family had perished. Some in Auschwitz, some in labour camps, others shot on the banks of the Danube River in Budapest. Together again as a family, we returned to our former home in Turks and Miklos. The house had been ransacked, but we found the gold bar that we had hidden beneath a loose floor tile. We tried to rebuild our lives, but within 18 months, violent anti-Semitic attacks began in neighbouring villages. My parents decided to shift to Budapest. It was a very difficult period. The new communist system resulted in economic chaos. My parents struggled to establish themselves. Anti-Semitism was a constant reality. In 1949, Shosha joined a Zionist youth group and decided to escape Hungary and start a new life in Israel. She was only 15 and on her arrival in Israel was sent to a small kibbutz on the Lebanese border, Kibbutz Menara. This was her home for the next 40 years. My teenage years in Budapest were dominated by 2 factors: guilt that my sister Shosha was living such a tough life in Israel, and fear that at any time we would be arrested by the communist regime. 3 of my boyfriends had been arrested, and we were constantly vigilant not to say or do anything that could be construed as a criticism of the Hungarian government. I dreamed of joining Shosha in Israel. In 1956, a student protest against the regime grew into a revolution. Mines were removed from the border, and the dream of escape became a possibility. On the 6th of December 1956, a young man appeared at our house and told us he was intending to escape and was willing to help me. This is how I met my future husband, Andrew. We managed to get across the border and into Austria. I was very keen to get to Israel, but Andrew wanted to get as far from Europe as possible. I had to make a choice between Israel and Andrew. I made the decision to put the relationship first. Thus, when he was accepted as a refugee to New Zealand, I followed. I have never allowed myself to dwell on the decision that I made. I have, however, lived with constant guilt at the comparative luxury of my life here in New Zealand. My sister's sons both fought in Israel's wars. Shosha's adopted son, Yossi, was killed in the Yom Kippur War. My parents made Aliyah shortly after I left Hungary. Despite a sense of isolation from my heritage and my extended family, after almost 70 years living here in New Zealand, I have come to love the culture, environment, and people of Aotearoa.